I'm going to go ahead and, all right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Is it live? We're live, Kimberly.
Amazing. That
Here
is
we
so
are
cool.
on the internet. Welcome,
Yes.
everyone. Welcome to this live stream today. I am what I would determine is like beyond thrilled to be having this conversation. Somebody who I've admired for a long time. I know many of you who are showing up here to join us live today are big fans of her work. And I can't wait to dig into everything that this wonderful woman has been working on and things that she's got in the works for 2021. But I just need to introduce our fabulous guest here today, Kimberly Espinel from the Little Plantation. So thank you for being here, Kimberly.
I'm so excited. Like to make it onto the bite chart
Oh,
means you've made it. It means like you've made it. You're somebody in food
you're
photography.
too much. Oh my goodness. Well, before we dig into the conversation, because we've got a lot of ground to cover today, it's, from books to kind of digging into your story. Definitely want to touch on the creative process there and also some fun things that are in the works for 2021 and sort of, here we are at the end of a year and sort of getting our mentality set for what is to come. But we've definitely got a lot of friendly folks here who familiar names. Anne Roberts is here. We've got Sylvia from the UK. Now you, Kimberly, you're in the UK right now, yes?
That's correct. Yeah. I live in London.
Fabulous. Well, good. And we got Jessica is here. Congrats to Jessica on launching her backgrounds company this week.
Amazing.
Super excited for that. But for those of you who are in the comments, if you can let us know, because I'm sure that Kimberly would like to know this too, what is something that you are planning to learn in 2021? I think that every year, we learn new things, whether we want to or not. Sometimes that learning is thrust upon us, like I would say this year. But what are some things that everyone's looking forward to learning in 2021? If you can just share that in the comments, a little bit of accountability factor. Is there anything for you that you're looking forward to learning in 2021, Kimberly?
Yeah. So I want to figure out video so I can record a new course. So that's my big learning. That's my big learning for 2021. Yes.
That is exciting. Well, any questions, you've got friends, people.
Thank you.
I love it. Oh, very good. We've got Roberto from Boston. Oh, it's snowing in Boston right now. And we've got Heather Barnes in the house.
Amazing.
Heather's doing some great work. Well, let's go ahead and jump in if you're ready, Kimberly.
I'm ready, yeah.
And for those who are also here, I just want to let you know, we will save some time at the end, of course, for some Q&A, because I'm sure you've got some great questions for Kimberly and her book. And we are going to be talking about her book, which those of you who have not pre-ordered it, I'm just going to put it out there right now. It is linked down below. You can go ahead and pre-order it. I have gotten to see a sneak peek PDF. I read through the whole thing, poured over it, found myself super inspired. I know y'all are going to love it. So we're going to get more into that in a minute, but the link is down below, so you can go ahead and grab that. For those of you who are in the comments too, tell us, those of you who've already pre-ordered the book, we'd love to hear. But Kimberly, you have a fun story, and you share some of that story in your upcoming book that's coming out. When is it coming out? January 4th?
January 7th.
First week of January. So you share a little bit about your background, that you have not been walking around with a camera in your hands since day one, that this is something that happened and sort of evolved over time. So can you kind of take us back? You have a background in social work and suddenly made this, seemingly very different pivot into food photography. So tell us, just take us down memory lane, kind of tell us about what was going on and what precipitated that change.
Yeah. So I'd say, I was a social worker for forever, almost 15 years, and I really loved it. Like I always knew I wanted to work with children, and I worked in adoption specifically. And then I had my son, and kind of a 9 to 5 just didn't feel right, because a 9 to 5 means you need to drop your kid off at 7. And then by the time you pick them up at 7. So I was like, no, this is not going to work out. So I sat down, I was like, what, I'm going to retrain. What do I love? I love food. So I retrained as a nutritional therapist. And in
Mm.
that process, I thought, you know what, let me set up a food blog. Let me share my vegan recipes because I just went plant-based.
Mm.
And let me just take some photos of food and share these recipes. And I didn't really think anything of it because really I wanted to just do my nutrition. And
Sure.
then when I picked up my camera, and I don't know if anybody who's tuning in now can relate to that, but just it was like magic, like
Mhm.
it feels so special to capture something and then it's there and it looks like kind of cute. And so, just going into all that, letting those creative juices flow, which when you're sitting at a desk or working a 9 to 5, you have to rein those creative
Mm.
energies in. And suddenly they were let loose, and
Yeah.
I just felt I was happy. I was really happy. And so I was like, I'm going to do this a little more. And, it was also at the early stages of Instagram. And so you could share. And that's really kind of the beginning of it all, really. So that's kind of how I
Yeah.
started.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting too, because to a certain degree, you're like, oh, wow, from social work into food photography and plant-based food. And, that's like seeming so different. But what's interesting too, though, is how you've really, to me, I think I see that you've brought that social work component kind of in the form of teaching, because to me, that's as much a part of how I know you and the content that you create online. What I appreciate is that teaching component. Did the teaching sort of come naturally to you?
Yes. So, as an adoption social worker, part of what you do is you hold training sessions to prepare, usually, childless couples to prepare for the journey of adoption. So,
Mhm.
training them and preparing them is part and parcel of the job. But even before that, I used to dance. Some of the people who follow me know my story. When I was a kid, through my teenage years, I danced. I was
Oh,
the kind of head of the dance troupe, so I would be teaching choreographies, and so I've taught. And then I did some yoga, and I was a yoga teacher for as a side hustle thing. So I've taught really for more than 20 years. And that's
wow.
really, and I never thought about it. I was just like, it's just something I do. But, I actually think it is my thing, it is really
Yeah.
what I know. And so that definitely helped, and I think the other thing is, as a social worker, you really have to tune into what people are feeling. So
Mm.
even if they're not saying it, how are they feeling about something? And so I think that skill of understanding what's inside people's hearts and
Mm.
working with that is something that I bring to how I teach and how I share my work as well.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting too, because yeah, it's not like you necessarily set out to say, okay, by 2020, I'm going to be working as a professional photographer and I'm going to have this teaching business and, all these things. Like you never set out for that to happen. I mean, I feel that way for myself, but it's when there's these things that are naturally inside of you. And as
Mm,
long as you continue to be honest in the process and continue to be yourself, I feel
yes.
like certain amount of things sort of take care of themselves. Do you agree?
Yes. And also, I think the other thing, and I know this from you because you've been on my podcast,
Yeah.
is also tuning, seeing what works.
Hmm.
So I know that you had a recipe YouTube channel or you did some recipe videos before, and that
Hmm.
somehow didn't land. And you're like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to go down this road. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to try something new. And I think
Hmm.
that's what I did as well. Like, I was really stuck on sharing recipes. And then I just got asked again and again and again about teaching and will you teach? And like, you know what? Like, okay, like let's try this. That wasn't my plan, but let's go for it. So kind of tuning into what your audience wants and
Yeah.
where they're taking you and just going along for the ride and see what happens.
Yeah.
That ability to pivot, I think, is really important.
Yeah. But to your credit, certainly that important step of the equation where I think a lot of people get stalled is the showing up. Like you've just got to
Mm.
continue to show up even when you're like, I don't entirely know what I'm doing.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
But being
yeah.
but showing up. But so in terms of like, I mean, your work today, it was so much fun to go through your book because just in terms of the visual story that's told throughout the book, the connected feeling of the images. It feels, I mean, certainly too, I'm sure anybody who's here and familiar with your work knows that whenever we're going through our Instagram feed or we're somewhere, it's like, we don't even need to know whose name is on it. We already know that's Kimberly's work. There's a
Oh,
very
thank
clear,
you.
there's a very clear style there and a voice, a visual voice. And so, over time, I feel like this is a conversation that could be had a million times, and we all still continue to sort of grapple with it and try to understand. But can you sort of pinpoint a point at which you could really feel, because this is certainly something too that you go through in the book and helping people learn about how to cultivate that voice and how to cultivate that style and what gets their heart racing, I think is the term that you use. Was there a moment, from the Kimberly picking up the camera to purely document these recipes to Kimberly sort of really coming into from a style perspective? Can you sort of chart when that happened, or was that a slow progression over time?
I think it was a slow progression. What I would say, honestly, is for me, it was important to do the self-taught bit and then
Mhm.
also to recognize, okay, I've plateaued now. Like I've reached a
Mm,
point where I just can't figure it out for myself. And so I attended a workshop, and I think there was something just that clicked
mm,
after that, in one that somebody said, actually, you're heading in the right direction, and this is what's not working, and kind of helped me unpick that. And also something happened at that workshop in terms of me really understanding that I needed to study light. And
mm,
when I say study light, I don't just mean backlight, side light. I mean really study it, like become a master of it. And
mhm,
that really helped me. Like you can see when that happened for me. And then I could feel like my work getting better. And then again, I just hit this little stumbling block. And then
mhm,
I did a one-to-one actually with a photographer I really admire.
mm,
And then we dove deeper into how can you actually tell a story? So how can you move beyond taking a photo of, a cute little cookie or something, and
mm.
then make it a story? And I think again, when that happened, I was like, and this way of photographing feels so right to me.
Yeah.
And, like all those things. So, just recognizing that there's so many things I can do on my own, and then getting that creative energy and push and also guidance
Mhm.
really helped me to push it and then I love to play. I love to play. So I
Yeah.
don't share those things necessarily because some of them hate all that, but I do a lot of things that I don't share. And
Sure.
then also actually when my work, when I started getting paid work,
Mhm.
photographing in, packaging, so how do you
Mm,
photograph packaging? Like how do you,
mhm,
like, and figuring that out and making it work and working with other people's brand identity and bringing
mm.
that to life. And all those things I think really helped me kind of fine tune my own style, as well as all the things I talk about in the book, of course.
Yes. Oh, and there are so many gems. I think that there's so many things that the thing too that really in reading the book that I took away was it just felt so, and I think this is so true. Like, I think you have such a strong brand overall that the book just feels like and I
Mm.
think that that's also, though, at the same time, one of the things that I appreciate about from a teaching perspective, because you do a lot of teaching from workshops to your podcast, to all sorts of various content online. Following you on Instagram, I feel like anybody who's not following Kimberly on
Oh,
Instagram, you
sweet.
share so many great nuggets. But it's always like it's within the context of it feels very authentically you, but at the same time really encouraging people to find their own thing, right? That you're not
Mm,
just stamping out cookie cutter,
no, no.
that it's really more of a framework as opposed to
Yes.
a prescription.
Absolutely. I think that's it, Joni, because, you know, it's so hard in lots of ways. I could provide a formula, and
Mhm,
there's sometimes depending where you are in your journey, that's what you need. I need to know I
mhm,
need to put my balance board here. I need to put it next to the window. I need to shoot. But I think when you get to a point where you are already shooting manually, where you actually know the basics,
mhm,
then really what you want is to find who you are as a creative being,
mhm,
because I always say the world doesn't need another Kimberly, like I'm here. Like the world
Job is
needs.
taken.
Yeah, that spot is taken exactly. And so I want everybody to come and read the book or study with me and then go away and be like, okay, I'm going to go on a journey to find out who I am and what makes me different, and then inject that. And so, I'm so glad that that came through, because that was really my intention with the book. And, just to backtrack, the book that you're reading today is not actually the first version of the book that I wrote. So I wrote a whole book, and I was like, let me just get all the basics in. So let me talk about exposure triangle. Let me talk about, focal lengths. Let me talk about white balance. Let me just do all the things.
Yeah.
And then I sat down actually with my editor, and we spent the whole day together. And she's like, but actually what you're doing is just giving people stuff that they can Google, and giving people stuff that is nothing about why they would want to come and study with you. Like, what is it about you? And that needs to come through the book. So 50% of the book we scrapped, and then I wrote it all again. And
Was that so painful?
it was, but it was painful, and it felt risky, because I know that people are going to pick up a book about food photography and be like, where's a section on exposure triangle? Why isn't she telling me what camera to buy? And so I knew there was a risk there, but I also knew that if I didn't write it in my authentic voice and really write how I teach, then people wouldn't get out of it what they needed to get out of this, right? So because so I didn't want to play it safe. I wanted to take a risk, because that's what I'm preaching. So I better practice what I preach and take a risk and create something that is a little bit unexpected, but hopefully has an impact.
Absolutely. I was talking with somebody the other day, talking about food photography books, because we see more and more food photography titles entering the space, which is so exciting. And I shared with her that one of my favorite food photography books, and it's really kind of geared more specifically to lighting for food photography. But what I loved is that the author sort of took that same sort of perspective and point blank put it out there in the introduction of the book, like, this is not the book to find out about the exposure triangle. This is not the book to find out about, camera settings. This is a book to help you think about lighting, and, go Google those other things, or, go find them on YouTube or what have you, because that information exists. And so I think that was such a smart move. And certainly I know got me excited, because I feel like that's the litmus test of any book, right? Is, does it get you excited to leave those pages and then go pick up your camera and go start trying things?
Yes. And that's what I wanted. I really wanted people to read this and be like, you know what? I'm going to ask myself these questions. I'm going to go on that journey of self-exploration. And I didn't want them to finish the book and be like, okay, now I'm going to stroll on Instagram. I wanted them to finish the book and be like, I want to take some action. I want to try this. That's really what I wanted.
Good. Well, speaking of getting on Instagram and scrolling, one of the parts of the book that I thought was so smart to include in there, especially in this day and age, and I can only assume that this will continue to become exponentially more important, that you talk about places to find inspiration and gaining inspiration. And you give the advice that we want to take the internet as inspiration, but maybe in smaller bites. Why is that important to you?
The reason is, I think we get almost like a stimulus overload. Like, I could scroll on Instagram for an hour and still not have seen everything that's on there. I could scroll for another hour and still not have seen. And it's just almost sometimes a little bit too much. And it's for our brains, it's too much to absorb all that. And then not to let that cloud how we then go out and pick up our camera and create something, because we've been so bombarded by all these different images. So and so did this, and so did that, so I must do that the same way, and then we fall into that trap of creating images that look just like everybody else. So sometimes dipping in and just having, I think I call it, little bites of Instagram are great, but we don't want to overdose, because I think it negatively impacts our self-esteem, actually, and also just our creative energies. It depletes us and doesn't allow us to really find our own style.
Absolutely. No, I think that's wonderful advice, and I'm really glad that you put that out there. And I think that, we're seeing these trends too, just in our food photography community, which is, rather tight knit to a degree, but, in the larger creative community. And I think in people in general that we're getting burned out on information overload, and that as creatives, we need that time and that space and that quiet in order for the creativity to really start to click. Because it can become very, I don't, it's hard to describe, but I agree. I think that we just need to all take that time, as much as some of us, want to go and produce
Mm.
and do this, but you got to give some time and space for things. Are you taking time and space here at the end of the year? I mean, you've accomplished so much in 2020. Are you taking some time for yourself?
Yes and no. So because the book comes out the 7th of January,
Yeah.
there's now the kind of pre-order, pre-promotion stage. So,
Yeah.
because I self-published, I do feel like I need to give it my all and then
Mhm.
some to just give
Mhm.
the book a chance. But
Mhm.
there will be a couple of days where I'm just shutting everything down and really enjoying Christmas and going for
Good.
it. But then I'll be back full force.
Good, 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 good. Well, yeah, it's all about the right seasons, right?
Mhm.
So, in terms of from, kind of going back to your story and to the journey, I mean, clearly, there was the cultivation of your style and continuing to fall in love with photography. At what point did this suddenly become something that, maybe seemingly started more as for fun, and you thought, I mean, did you start out thinking like, oh, I could turn this into a business, or was it
No.
more intentionally a hobby, or what was your mindset at the
It
beginning?
was so the mindset was that once I qualify as a nutritional therapist, so I had 3 years, the course is 3 years, that I'll have a body of recipes that I can share with clients. I maybe will have had grown an Instagram audience who would maybe hire me as their nutritional
Mhm.
therapist. So that was it. It was never, I'm going to be a food photographer or anything like that, or even a food blogger. But what
Yeah.
happened during those 3 years is I started to get offers for sponsored content posts, and that grew and grew. And then kind of, I think it must have been the last year of my studies, I was asked to prop style a couple of commercials, and then to prop style a cookbook. And I just like, you know what, actually this might work. Actually, this could be a thing. So that's it was very gradual, but
Yeah.
by the time I graduated, I was earning a decent amount of money that I felt like, actually, if I go into this, this is going to might be financially viable. So that's how
Yeah.
it happened.
You start to see that. I think that can be scary though too, when all of a sudden something that you're not necessarily planning to be your thing and people want to hire you for it. Were there moments where you were maybe second guessing that, or had to like take the gig anywhere? Or did you feel confident like, oh, I can do this?
Well, all of that collided. So the end of my course and then all of this happening, all of that collided with my 40th birthday.
Okay.
So I did think, is this a midlife crisis? Am I just having a moment here?
Yeah.
Um, so, but I just kept thinking, doing this makes me happy.
Yeah.
I'm just happy. I can't stop smiling. I love this.
Yeah.
I love it. And
Mhm.
so that's all I need. And
Yeah.
that's why I went for it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that I just following that. Forget who it was recently. Something that kind of paying attention to the quadrants of life, that we've got things that we're good at and that make us happy, and that's where you should really inhabit most of your time. Now,
Yes.
there's other things that make us happy, but we're not that great at. But those are still like good things to pursue. Where you get into a lot of trouble is things that you're good at but don't make you happy,
Mm,
which I know for me in, past day jobs prior to food photography, there's plenty of other things that I'm good at, but I just, yeah, didn't give me that creative fulfillment, and that you should
yeah.
really need to be careful in that territory, because it
Yeah.
can really prevent you from doing the things that you both
Yes.
enjoy and are good at.
Yes. And I think the pandemic, in that sense, has
Mm,
been a real gift, because suddenly we're confronted with the fact that life is finite.
Mhm.
It could be us next. And
Mhm.
so I always think, do I want to be on my deathbed and be like, why didn't I go for that thing? Why didn't I do that thing? And I'd rather be on my deathbed and be like, I did it, I failed. Okay, whatever. Than
No
not
regrets.
know. I like not know. And I think so many of us get stuck in fear, and actually also within the photography and creativity space, we get stuck in fear. What if I put this is really how I would photograph this cookie. This is how I would really do it. What if people don't like it? Okay,
Mm.
no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to play it safe and put the one that everybody expects. I think the fear is something that we battle with all the time.
Mhm.
And I think I'm fearful. I'm sure every time you launch your YouTube videos,
Every time I
you
go
know,
live, I get so nervous.
exactly,
I've got little rituals here behind the scenes because I get nervous before I
exactly,
come online for y'all.
exactly.
But it's something I show up for because the happiness outweighs the fear.
Yeah. And the thing is doing it anyway. So the fear is there and then you do it anyway. And so that could be in terms of your job, that could be in terms of how you express yourself as a creative. The fear is there, but to do it anyway. And I think, yeah, to live life as full as you can.
Yeah.
That's really the message.
Yeah. So if fear is there, it's a good indication you're doing something right.
Yes, you're doing something exciting.
Oh, I love it. So going into then the process of writing a book,
Mm.
how long did this process go on for you? Because I loved how, for those who follow you on Instagram, there was a lot of charting of the book baby and the process of how it all came to be. But when did that initial nugget start? How did that conversation start? Where was the beginning?
So, the thing is, again, I had quite a few people come to me and say, "Why don't you write a book about food photography? I'd love it. I love that. I would love to be able to read it and what's available. It feels a little dated." And, like they planted a seed. I was like, maybe I can. And then I woke up. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. Like, I just feel I have to do this. And
Yeah.
so I announced it. The irony is I hadn't planned it this way, but the book comes out pretty much exactly 2 years on the day that I announced that I was writing the book. So the whole process took 2 years. And um, I really felt in my gut that I needed to write this
Mm.
book. I felt it in my gut. And I felt very conceitedly, I was like, well, if I feel it, then surely it's going to happen. Like I'm going to get a publisher because I can feel in my gut I need to write this book. Like the
Yeah.
stars are going to align for me for sure.
Yeah.
And then when I got rejection after rejection, I was like, I don't understand. Like I know I need to write this book.
Yeah.
And so, that whole process, that all, sending it off and refine tuning the proposal and then sending it off again. And every time it came back and, nobody wanted it. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Like,
Yeah.
I know I need to write this book. And
Yeah.
so I think there was some delays with that, but
Mm.
eventually then I decided to self-publish. And
Mhm.
then getting those wheels into motion
Yeah.
takes a little longer.
Sure.
There's a lot of little extra things that happen that need to happen for that to all come to be. And I think that's why it took 2 years. But also, I wrote the book alongside continuing to do my work, teach my workshops, doing my
Mhm.
client work. And
Mhm.
so there was times I was just really tired, really
Mhm.
tired.
Yeah.
And so I needed to take some breaks to fuel up my creative tanks again, so to speak.
Yeah.
And just gave myself time. I was like, I get to decide. And I need more time. I have no
Yeah.
deadline, but the one I set for myself. So 2 years is what it took from beginning to end.
That's incredible. I mean, it is interesting because, yeah, 2 years ago, there was a lot less too, I think, just in terms of presence of food photography in general, I feel like there's just been this amazing explosion in demand in the marketplace, and especially too now with 2020, so many,
Mm,
I'm sure you encounter this too, a lot of food, photographers from other disciplines who now find themselves stuck at home, and well, what is there to photograph at
Yes.
home? Well, there's food. And so I think that the demand, the timing, you were sort of ahead of the curve in this sense and knew that this was meant to be. But I mean, that takes a lot to continue to push through that rejection. But certainly, I mean, it has yielded an incredible product and final book. Were there any sort of, I mean, other than sort of just that process of going through the self-publishing adventure, which I'm sure there were a lot of things you learned in the process. Were there specific roadblocks? If somebody was setting out today to go self-publish a book, things that you'd say, hey, keep this on your radar is something to be aware of.
Yes. So the first thing I think is to keep thinking about why you want to write the book. So is this a vanity project? So I had to ask myself that question, like, is this about me? Or is this because there's something that I want to give? And I think if it's just about, I want to write a book because I want to write a book, I'm not sure it will be enough to pull you through the process. So that, there has to be a bigger why behind it, I think. Also, just to be sure that people want the book, have your audience asked you, are you an expert in this field? And where does the book fit into your brand and business? So I had been approached a couple of times to write a cookbook, but I thought, I don't dream of having a cookery show, or I don't want to be a cookbook writer, or I'm not teaching cookery classes. Like, where does it fit in my business? It doesn't really fit. So writing it for me didn't really make any sense other than it looked fancy,
Right.
And then also the other thing is it is a big financial undertaking. And so, it's a big financial undertaking. So I just worked extra to earn that cash. But and so that might be something to think about, how are you going to save up and pay it in full or take out loans? But it is a big financial investment for sure.
Yeah.
So that's something else to think about.
Yeah. Though, fortunately, though, too, when you self-publish, you get to take home a lot more than
that's true.
than working
That
with
is
it.
true.
So, I mean, because I feel like, I don't know if you follow Pat Flynn at all.
Yes.
Yes. And he's self-published. I think he's traditionally published and self-published, and certainly, has some really great resources on sort of navigating that. Because I think it's very different for all sorts of people, depending on your objectives, your own personal desires, like you said, sort of that financial component. But there can be so many advantages to publishing it yourself.
Loads. I think, so for one, the only big difference with Pat Flynn's books are that he does mainly paperback books.
Sure.
And so the production of his books is going to be much lower than the production of, say, a cookbook. I'm guessing most people tuning in would want to write a cookbook, for example. So the production of a cookbook is very expensive. And actually it was nice for me to understand, now going through it, why so many publishers turn it down, because it is a big financial investment, and now going through it, I understand that. So, but the benefit is that you get to make all the decisions. There's nothing you have to compromise on. Like, for example, I decided to do copper foiling. So when you touch the front of the book, the letters are in copper, and it's a really nice sensation, and it glistens and glows.
Beautiful.
That's really, for a new first-time author, most publishing houses will not invest in that little extra.
No.
Whereas you're like, I'm pulling the purse strings here. I can spend money on whatever I want to.
Absolutely.
Or, I know a lot of my friends who have published books. Some of them have had great publishers who have allowed them to have an input in the design, the layout, and the cover shot. And some of them have not. And so again, I got to choose which photo I wanted and what layout I wanted and how I wanted it to flow. So if you know that either if you're a graphic designer, or you've got a really good sense of design, or that you want to get stuck into every little design detail, then self-publishing is wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I know, because I remember the whole process of for you, there seem to be like some really major, crucial, I mean, very important decisions in terms of the paper, in terms of the way it looked printed, that what you had
Yes.
imagined it would look like. And then when you got
Yes.
that actual printed, you're like,
Yes,
this is
it was
not
horrible. I
okay.
cried. I cried
Did
so
you?
much because you know this, Joni, because you've done much more with cookbooks. Didn't realize
Yeah.
that, what we see on our screens, the
Mhm.
colorways RGB. And
Mhm.
so then printers, professional printers don't use that colorway. They use CMYK,
Mhm.
which the colors that you get through that, it's a much more limited color spectrum.
Mhm.
So I got it and it was really dark and it was really like muted. I was like, oh my God.
No.
So, but we got there. We
Painful.
got there in the end. But
Yeah.
it's little things like that. Or I spend weeks trying to figure out, how do I get my book on Amazon for
Mm.
ready for pre-order? Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And then if somebody orders on Amazon, how does Amazon know to just like, I just didn't, like, whereas the publishing house, they have that all automated. They have
Yeah.
that all, set. They know which printers to use, they know which
Yeah.
distributors to use. So, you have to figure that all out for yourself if you're going to
I mean, that you
self-publish.
were able to do all of that in 2 years is actually incredible.
Oh,
I mean, when you
sweet.
think about
Well, I've got some extra gray hair, so that happened.
I love it. Well, we're getting kind of close to the end of our time.
Yes.
Um, for those who are looking to self-publish,
Mhm.
because I'm sure there's plenty of, like, I think probably most folks here who are joining us, looking at the cookbook space and, other
Yes.
things like that, where would be the first place you would just send them to find information and to start digging in?
Do you know what I would do if they can take it, if they can take the rejection, and that might actually not happen? I would go and pitch it the
Okay.
traditional way, even if you plan to self-publish. And the
Mhm.
reason is that the rejection letters I got were actually really, really helpful
Mm.
in me. Some of the reasons for that they didn't want to go with the book were actually really legit. And
Mm.
so I could take that and then build that in. So, one of the people, and that, she said, this sounds a little bit like an e-course. And and actually when I thought that was a valid point. And that's when we, changed it and pivoted and took out some bits and pieces and turned it into a book that was. Or I had some bits in there around camera gear. And one of the feedback that came back was, this can date really, really quickly because, the
Mm.
models are updated constantly. And I was like, that's a really valid point. So lots of the rejections I got was really, really helpful for me to understand. And then also when you do your traditional proposal, you have to actually talk about how you're going to market the book and who the book is for. Like, who
Mm.
are you writing this book for?
Mm.
And actually thinking through that and having that all spelled out and written out is going to help you as you move through writing the book. Because
Yeah.
like, I had two people, Susanna and Roya. They were my two muses that I had in the back of my head. So I was always speaking to them. And so I was like, I don't need to explain that to them. They get that. But these are the bits and pieces I do need to explain because they won't understand that. So knowing who your audience is, which is, you have to put in a traditional proposal, it's going to help you. And then
Mhm.
the final bit is, where's there a gap in the market?
Mm.
Going again with what you said, Joni, like, what are you good at? What is your expertise? What makes you happy? And where's there a gap in the market? And is there a place where those two actually link up? Because if you are going to bring out 50 vegan cookie recipes, if there are already 10 books on that subject, then yours has got to be really different or really special. Or why not do something totally different that isn't
Yeah.
out there yet? So,
Yeah. Well, and I believe you've got on your website, which I've got linked in the description box for anybody who has not checked it out, beautiful website, but I believe you've got some resources for people in terms of that process of,
yes.
pitching a book. Yeah.
Yes. So I've got a book proposal outline on there with some
Excellent.
questions and guidance. And yes, definitely.
Fabulous. So that is right on Kimberly's website. You can grab that down in the description box below. Well, for those of you who are not already, there's lots of folks who've already
Oh,
said.
yay.
Lenny
I
M
can't
has
see the
said
comments.
she's,
So,
I know. So Lenny M has pre-ordered the book.
oh,
She's so
sweet.
excited. Female food photographers for the win.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yay.
So lots of folks excited. Feel free, those of you who are here with us still, feel free to pop into the chat any questions that you've got for myself and Kimberly. We're happy to stick around for a little bit longer. Francis says, you are truly inspiring.
Oh,
I know it's such an inspiring process that you've been through. Now, one thing I wanted to, because of course I get so excited every time you pop in the inbox with the email blasts. I subscribe to your emails, and you had mentioned this week that you are really going to focus in 2021, that you're letting some things go. Yeah?
Yes. Oh, no, I write the newsletter as though no one reads it. That's how I write it. And I'm like, Joni read my newsletter.
Of
Oh my
course. I
God.
get excited. I'm like, what's Kimberly up to? What she's doing?
Oh my God. So, yes. So, again, I always use the beating of my heart, like I always use that as my guide. And there were certain things that weren't fulfilling me and also not my audience. And so there's somebody at the door. I'm not going to open. No, I'm not going to open. So, they weren't fulfilling me anymore. And then at the same time, there were things that I was doing kind of like the way that I started my sponsored content stuff. Like, oh, this is happening. Okay, let's see what happens. And then I got it more and more. Oh, he's persistent. I don't know if you can hear him.
Oh, no, you're good.
But and so one of those things is actually creative coaching. So I'm going to do a small coaching group, probably about 8 or so in 2021, and then also do a food styling course, because I think that is my unique skill is give me the ugliest foods you can ever think of, and I will make them look delicious. Like I will. And I want to teach you how to do it. So those are the two things I'm really excited about. And those are the two things I want to be focusing on. Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. But yeah, I mean, I think with only, being a creative person, being a mom, being a wife, being somebody who's got, all sorts of various interests in life, you need to sometimes cut things out and say, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, because in the interest of really doing a great job of focusing in this specific area. And I know that I am excited for that styling course, because I think that
Girl, you can style.
Oh, but I know what you're talking about. From a teaching standpoint, because to me, the ability to teach styling, there is a certain, I mean, it's definitely more art than science, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So,
and I also think the other thing is, I think we're going over. I don't want to take up people's question times.
You're good.
But, we often stick. So if you know how to do your sweet styling, then we often stick in that zone. And then, especially if you want to do a cookbook, you better know how to do your soups and your boring stuff and your stews. And, like you're the taco queen for me, like your taco styling. You got it down. You got it down.
Tacos and sandwiches. I'll do those all day long. No problem.
Exactly. But I think it's good that we all know how to do everything, because it makes us feel confident. Like makes us feel we can step into a space confidently and be like, what, Stu, I got this,
Yeah. I think so many people are their comments are already saying folks are super excited for that, because I think that is that's definitely content that's underserved. So yeah, looking for the area in the market where can we serve, right?
Yes, exactly.
So let's see. Talk more about self-publishing and marketing. Oh, so Budget Friendly Cooking is working on a Georgian cookbook. And in the same sort of
Georgian, as in from Georgia, the country, or Georgia, the state?
That's a very good question. I'm assuming probably Georgia, the country.
Okay. Exciting.
Because I don't think Georgia is a state. Well, I mean, Georgia's got some great, but that kind of gets thrown in with the American Southeast. But yeah, so just from the self-publishing aspect and the marketing component, any good advice there?
Yes. So, when it boils down to this, I'm a real geek. Actually, like I put on some cute makeup to hide it, but underneath it all, I'm a total geek. I love me some good spreadsheets. And
Mhm.
so I have a spreadsheet. And what I notice is that every time I mention the book, somebody buys the book. Every time I mention it on a podcast, somebody buys it. Every time I mention it on Instagram, somebody buys it. Every time I mention it in the newsletter. And a lot of the times, I think we get really shy about selling and marketing our products,
Mhm.
because I always say this, we get into food photography not because we want to be entrepreneurs or because we're incredible salespeople. We get into it because we love food.
Yeah.
But that selling and marketing aspect is actually really important. And that's important whether you self-publish or whether you publish traditionally.
Mm.
And I've noticed that a lot, that people, they mention it twice. And like, I've mentioned it twice. I don't want to I don't want to bombard people with my book. Bombard people with your book. If they don't want to tune in, they'll tune out. Like if you're proud
Yeah.
of what you've created, if you really believe in it,
Yeah.
then you need to sing, at the top of the hills, because nobody else will. Like you're the book baby's mama,
Yep.
like you need to
Yep.
step up to the mark.
Mhm.
So that's really important. And then also, if somebody like Joni reaches out, you say yes. And try to get on podcasts.
Yeah.
Reach out to magazines. Be sure that you've got a mailing list before you even start writing the book that you can
Mhm.
market the book to. So, little things. So I thought about that a lot, especially because the downside of not having a traditional publisher is they have links to all the press. I don't have that. But
Mhm.
we've got our creative juices. So
Yeah.
let's get creative about marketing creatively. And that's really what I've been doing.
Yeah.
So
I
for
think that,
example,
yeah,
oh, sorry, I'm
go
just going to give
ahead.
this away just because this is an
I
exclusive.
love it. I love it.
But I reached out to Woodville Backdrops, or we
Oh,
were in
yeah.
communication, you know, and I was like, listen, I'm bringing out my book. Can we do a giveaway? Can we do two? And they're like, yeah. I said, can we do two giveaways? And they're like, okay. So, like that, I know that's something my audience is going to get excited about. I know that their audience overlaps with mine. So it's something that's going to serve them. It's going to serve me. And I made a long list of what's possible. What can I do? So yeah.
I think it's the same. I mean, it's the same method for building a successful photography business,
Mhm.
is assessing who are the contacts, who are the
Yeah.
people that can benefit from this. How do we get a hold of these people, and not being afraid? I mean, getting back to the fear thing where we always come back
Yes.
to is not
That's
being
it.
afraid to reach out and say, hey, this is something that I've done or that I do or I can do with you, creating those
Yes.
opportunities, because people are not just, showing up on your doorstep saying, hey, can you come do this?
No, no, exactly,
You
exactly.
got to get out there. I love it. Oh, Helen from A Step Full of You says she cannot wait for everything coming your way in
Helen is so
2021.
sweet. Do you know how sweet Helen is, honestly?
She wants to know, can you share how you time manage, knowing that you have courses, you're teaching kids, brand
Yes.
work, many more things. Do you have advice in terms of time management?
So I'm going to be really honest. This is something also I need to take, and actually, Joni and I were talking about this before we went live. This is really something I need to reflect on more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hiring somebody new. So if you read the newsletter, I'm just in the process of interviewing for a podcast editor. And I think that role might become a little bigger, actually, um, because I'm finding it hard. For the book, what I did is I woke up at 6 a.m. every morning, and there's this app, the Calm app. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure a lot of you know it. And there's this song called Sunrise, which lasts 60 minutes. And I would put it from the moment I sat in front of the computer, and I would not leave my seat until the song was finished. And so I did
Okay.
that from 6 to 7. So I had my writing slot, then wake up, do breakfast, all the things, shoot, da 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 da. And then usually on the weekends, I did all the shots for the book.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did it did I didn't wear myself down, so I'm not
Yeah.
recommending it like that
Yeah.
necessarily. But, that's the reality of having to manage something that is as big as a book, to fit it all
Mm-hmm.
in. But now I think, I need to expand my team and hand some bits and pieces over. Joni, I also don't know if you've got some extra, I'm sure you do, got some extra hands helping you out there,
Yeah.
because it's not possible. to do everything and to be everywhere. And but
No.
there's certain things that also means you have certain things that you can spend more energy on. So the
Mhm.
writing of the newsletter, for example, the podcast, actually getting all the right guests, and um, so yeah, hope that
No,
helps.
I agree though. I think that the moment that you see something that you realize that this would be, this is worth the financial investment to hire somebody, to bring somebody in to get involved in this, and kind of before you feel ready for it. I feel like I've never regretted making those leaps when I'm like, I'd love to hang on to that extra $500 a month,
Yeah.
but I know that I'm going to be better served and that this is
Yes.
going to free me up because then I can fill that
Yes.
space with something
Exactly.
better. Like, I think a prime example is, I've always done my own bookkeeping, and I
Mm.
finally, this week, this is
Oh
like
my God, I'm
major
so
breakthrough for me.
jealous.
This week, I finally hired a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
Because can I do bookkeeping? Sure. Am I best served doing
Amen.
that? No. Am I like, oh,
Amen.
well, I could save $500 a month instead of paying this person to handle all these things? But at the end of the day, that extra however many hours a month for me
Mm.
is going to allow me to either A, rest, which is super
Yes.
duper important and none of us do as
Yes.
often as we should,
Yeah.
or B, use that as creative fuel for new
Yeah.
fun things, or just make the things that I'm currently doing that much better.
Yes. But Joni, I'm so glad you shared that because, people think that the Little Plantation is me. The Little
Mhm.
Plantation is not me. Christina, who does my admin, I would die without her. If she hands in her notice, I will officially cry. Beatriz she's my Pinterest manager, and also both of them were my cheerleaders on this process. We cannot function without there being a team in the
Mhm,
background. And I'm so glad you shared that because I think it's
mhm.
important for people to know
Yeah.
that it takes a village. It takes
It
a little
does.
village.
It is. And you just keep adding to that village and finding opportunities. It doesn't happen overnight, but
No.
over the course of 3 years for me, it's accumulated all these wonderful humans who are far
Yes.
better at doing certain things than I could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, Jenna Jones says, "Hey, now Georgia has great food. Georgia, the state, has great food. I'm sure. I'm sure. Brunswick stew from Brunswick, Georgia." Sylvia wants to know, we've got a couple minutes here left. Sylvia wants to know for you, Kimberly, food that you prefer to shoot and which one is one that poses more challenges or that you maybe don't look forward to photographing.
So I love stews, curries. I love those things because normally they're the foods that people don't like. And, I talk a little bit about that in the book as well. I think there's something about food from the Caribbean, from Asia, that people are like, oh, they're not so cute. And I think they're
Yeah.
gorgeous. So
Yeah.
I love doing that. Um, I think hard things for me and are anything that is meat related. So I can style it, but and I'm also not squeamish about it, but it's not something usually when a job comes up for that is styling, a roast dinner, I'm always like, oh, I'd rather not if I don't have to. So that kind of meaty things, I'm
Yes.
not so good because it's just not part of my diet. So
Yes.
I haven't had as much practice.
It's not that personal connection. Well, and I
No.
think that the fortunate thing is, I think, and you can attest to this, there is so much food photography work out there that
Yes.
we should not be afraid to turn down jobs
Mm,
that don't fit into what it is that we do.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
There's a lot
Absolutely.
of work out there.
Joni, listen, I'm gonna open my curtain because
Oh,
it is
yes.
getting really dark and I'm getting all pixelated.
Oh,
Open
no,
my
we've
curtain a little
lost
bit
you.
more. Let's see if that helps. Does it help?
There she is.
Yeah, it helps a lot. Good.
Oh, here we
Sorry.
go. Let's end on this question.
Wonderful.
I'm excited. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. So Heather Barnes asked, and this is a topic that comes up, I think, in the food photography space a lot. How do you deal with people who copy you? Do you let it go? How do you handle that?
So, it's really interesting because I did an Instagram an IGTV on the topic. And out of all the IGTVs I did, this was the one that, I had most responses to. And I wasn't expecting that because it's not something that I find hard personally
Mhm.
because but I accept that a lot of people find that very difficult. And and so I want to acknowledge that it's not nice. It's not nice when that happens. But I think nobody is you. Nobody is me. And so if they do the flat lay and the poached pears or whatever it is, it's not me. And so I'm really relaxed about it. If it
Yeah.
bothers you, I think, you can be really heavy-handed and block them, and I think you can. I
Yeah.
always find that confronting it just doesn't help people. Sometimes people don't realize that they're doing it,
Mhm.
or sometimes that taps into, their own sort of insecurities. So I often have noticed that that doesn't really work, but maybe just zoning them out, so to say,
Mhm.
and focusing on what you can do and know that nobody can be you.
Absolutely. Well, and I feel like something that I know is a part of it has to be a part of the success that you've had is that you have the long view on things,
Yes.
right? And that when you see somebody who, I mean, there's certainly from an educator standpoint, sometimes we want people to copy it so that they can go through the process of learning, right? Like I've got this pomegranate overhead shot that I did in a video years ago. And like the number of people that recreated that image just to like practice that technique, it just
Mm,
always makes me smile as an educator, right?
yes.
But when people are, maybe copying more of the creative stuff that we're putting out into the world and things like that, I always think, okay, like a little credit would be nice. But at the same time, like that's like that little instant gut reaction. But then I always remember the long view is
Mm,
I'm here for the long haul.
yeah.
And maybe this is just a stepping stone for this person to get
Yes.
their own creative juices, and
Yes.
that's okay. And that
Yes.
3 years from now, if they're still copying me, then that's a little weird, right? Like then at that point you
Exactly.
start to wonder,
Yeah.
like, how is this person sustaining their business or their
Yeah.
creative energy? Because that would be, I think, hard to
But
create an
I
impact.
think Joni, you approach it in a very similar way that I do, with empathy. I
Mhm.
just think yeah, I just think what are they feeling that they need to imitate what I'm doing? Maybe they're
Mhm.
not feeling so secure in their own style yet. And frankly, I also need to think back of where I started.
Mhm.
Like I saw stuff by Linda Lomolino and I was like, "Oh
Mhm.
my God, I want to try that."
Oh,
So somebody inspired me too. And I don't want to forget my beginnings. I don't want to forget where I come from. I just
yeah.
started, I was at square one, just like everybody else. And so I
Oh,
need
yeah.
to put myself in their shoes and just remember yeah, it is what it is, right? Like
The
it's not
number
gonna
of
affect your business. You're gonna be
no.
just fine.
The number of Dennis the Prescott ripoffs I did back in the day, I can't even count. Love it.
I'm sure,
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's a great question. Well, Kimberly, this has been this hour went so fast. I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time. It's the
Thank you.
holidays. It's a busy season, so much going on. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for writing this book because I think that this is something that is going to inspire so many people, get them so excited to start shooting new things, think about things differently. So thank you for all of your work. It's a pleasure to
Thank
get to
you.
talk with you today.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor, and you're a very special person, Jody.
Oh,
Thank you for having me.
lots of love to you. And of course, thank you so much to all of our friends who joined us here
I
today.
can't see you, but yeah.
Y'all, I know let's see who else we've got. Jonathan here and oh, Jessica, I love it. Thank you so much to all of you for being here, taking time out of your day. As a reminder, you can find all of Kimberly's information down the description box below. And I don't know, I think you can like live videos. Yeah, like we got to do the whole YouTube thing.
Let's do it.
Like it, smash the like button, subscribe, all those things. But I'll be back next week with a new video. We're going to be playing with sparklers. So stay tuned for that. But thank you. Happy holidays and take care, Kimberly.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Okay.